ऐसे होटल में रुकना तो
In the late 1600s, the Great Lakes were not borders or shipping lanes. They were frontiers. Vast, cold, and only partially known, they formed the heart of a struggle between European empires trying to control trade, land, and influence in North America. It was into this uncertain world that a small wooden ship named the Griffin was launched, carrying with it ambition, risk, and a mystery that has never been fully solved. The Griffin was built in 1679 under the direction of René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, a French explorer determined to open a trade network stretching from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. La Salle believed that controlling inland waterways was the key to French power in the New World. The Great Lakes were central to that vision, but they were also dangerous and unpredictable. At the time, no European-style sailing ship had ever traveled the upper Great Lakes. Smaller canoes and boats were common, but the idea of a large, decked vessel carrying cargo and cannons across Lake Erie, Lake Huron, and Lake Michigan was seen by many as reckless. La Salle saw it differently. He believed the risk was necessary. The Griffin was constructed near present-day Niagara Falls, above the dangerous rapids. Its name came from the Griffin emblem associated with French royalty, a symbol of power and protection. The ship was about 45 tons, built of wood, and equipped with sails suited for inland waters. It also carried several cannons, not for battle, but to impress indigenous nations and rival traders. From the beginning, the Griffin was surrounded by tension. La Salle faced opposition from other French traders who feared losing control of the fur trade. Some saw his expedition as a threat to their profits. Others believed he was overreaching, pushing too far into territory that could not be controlled. In August 1679, the Griffin set sail from the Niagara River and entered Lake Erie. It passed through Lake St. Clair and Lake Huron, reaching the upper lakes with a small crew and a heavy cargo of trade goods. For La Salle, this was a moment of triumph. The ship proved that European vessels could survive these waters. But the lakes were not done testing that claim. As the Griffin moved westward, it encountered storms that shook the ship and frightened the crew. Accounts from the expedition describe rough seas and growing fear. Some crew members believed the ship was cursed. Others suspected sabotage. La Salle himself worried constantly about betrayal, knowing that not everyone involved wanted the mission to succeed. The ship eventually reached Green Bay, then known as La Bay in present-day Wisconsin. There, La Salle unloaded much of the cargo, trading goods for valuable furs. These furs were meant to be transported back east to repay debts and fund further exploration. The success of the entire expedition depended on that return trip. In September 1679, La Salle ordered the Griffin to sail back toward Niagara, loaded with furs and commanded by a small crew. He did not go with it. That decision would haunt history. The ship departed Green Bay and entered Lake Michigan, heading east. It was never seen again. No confirmed wreckage was found. No survivors returned with a clear account. News of the loss traveled slowly, carried by rumor and speculation. Some believed the ship sank in a storm. Others believed the crew mutinied, stole the cargo, and destroyed the ship to hide the crime. La Salle himself suspected betrayal, convinced that enemies had arranged the ship's disappearance. What makes the loss of the Griffin especially haunting is how little certainty surrounds it. Lake Michigan is vast, and in the 1600s, there were no accurate maps of its depths or hazards. Storms could rise suddenly, and a wooden ship loaded with cargo would have had little chance if caught in heavy seas. Yet Lake Michigan has preserved countless later shipwrecks in remarkable condition. Cold freshwater slows decay. Wooden hulls can remain intact for centuries. If the Griffin sank, there is a real possibility that parts of it still exist on the lake bed, hidden beneath sediment. This possibility has fueled centuries of searching. Historians, divers, and treasure hunters have all tried to locate the ship. Over time, several sites have been proposed as the final resting place of the Griffin. Each claim has sparked excitement, followed by doubt. One of the challenges is identification. The Griffin was a simple ship by modern standards. It lacked unique features that would make it easy to distinguish from other early wrecks. Any wooden structure found on the lake bed must be carefully dated and compared to historical records. Even then, certainty is rare. Adding to the confusion is the lack of detailed records from the voyage. Journals from La Salle's expedition are incomplete and sometimes contradictory. Distances, directions, and timelines are not always clear. This makes it difficult to narrow down where the ship might have been when it vanished. Over the years, several expeditions have claimed to have found the Griffin. Some reported wooden timbers. Others pointed to iron fastenings or ballast stones. In most cases, further study showed the remains belonged to later ships, often from the 1800s. Each false lead deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. What keeps the story alive is not just the missing ship, but what it represents. The Griffin stands at the very beginning of European deep-water travel on the Great Lakes. Its loss marks the moment when ambition collided with an environment that refused to be controlled. In the world of underwater archaeology, the Griffin occupies a unique place. It is both a deep-sea mystery and an early chapter in the story of submerged civilizations of trade and exploration. Finding it would not just solve a puzzle. It would connect modern researchers directly to the earliest days of Great Lakes history. As the search continues, the focus shifts from legend to evidence. New technology, better mapping, and stricter standards are slowly reshaping how claims are evaluated. In the next part, the story moves forward into those searches, examining who looked for the Griffin, where they searched, and why the answers remain so hard to reach. By the early 1800s, the Griffin had already become a legend. French control of the region had faded, borders had shifted, and the Great Lakes were filling with new kinds of ships. Yet the question remained the same. What happened to La Salle's ship, and where did it go down? The first serious attempts to answer that question came not from divers, but from historians. They returned to the few surviving records from La Salle's expedition. Letters, journals, and later accounts were studied line by line. These sources did not agree on every detail, but they did provide clues. Most placed the ship's final voyage somewhere in Lake Michigan, likely along the eastern or northern shoreline. La Salle himself believed the ship was lost through betrayal. He suspected that the crew mutinied, murdered the officers, and sank or burned the ship to steal the cargo of furs. This belief was shaped by his deep mistrust of rivals and traders who opposed his plans. However, no proof of mutiny was ever found. No furs linked to the Griffin appeared on the market. No confessions surfaced. Other historians leaned toward a simpler explanation. Lake Michigan is known for sudden storms, especially in autumn. The Griffin left Green Bay in September, a dangerous season even today. A heavily loaded ship, sailing against shifting winds, could have been overwhelmed quickly. In that scenario, the ship would have sunk with all hands, leaving no witnesses. As time passed, the mystery shifted from written history to physical search. In the 20th century, interest in underwater archaeology grew, and with it came new tools. Sonar, magnetometers, and later remotely operated vehicles made it possible to search large areas of the lake bed. Several search efforts focused on areas near Washington Island and the Dore Peninsula. These locations matched some interpretations of La Salle's route and were known for treacherous waters. Strong currents, rocky shoals, and sudden storms had claimed many later ships there. If the Griffin was lost in bad weather, these waters were a strong candidate. In the 1950s and 60s, amateur explorers reported finding old timbers and iron objects. Some believed they had discovered the Griffin. These claims often reached newspapers, briefly reviving public interest. But when examined more closely, the finds did not match a 17th-century vessel. Many were from 19th-century schooners or steamships. The problem was not enthusiasm. It was proof. Identifying a shipwreck from the 1600s is extremely difficult. Early ships used wooden pegs instead of metal nails. Their construction methods differ from later vessels, but those differences are subtle. Without artifacts like cannons, anchors, or cargo that can be dated, even experts struggle to draw firm conclusions. In the late 20th century, professional archaeologists became more involved. They brought stricter standards and a more cautious approach. Instead of announcing discoveries, they documented, compared, and often ruled sites out quietly. This reduced false claims, but it also slowed public excitement. One of the most controversial moments came in 2014, when a team using side-scan sonar announced they may have found the Griffin in Lake Michigan. The sonar image showed a shape consistent with a wooden ship, along with a protruding object that some interpreted as a bowsprit. The location matched certain historical theories. The announcement drew immediate attention. Media outlets reported that the mystery might finally be solved. But experts urged caution. Sonar images can be misleading. Shadows can exaggerate shapes. Without a physical examination, conclusions were premature. Follow-up surveys raised doubts. The size of the object did not clearly match historical descriptions. No confirmed 17th-century artifacts were recovered. As with earlier claims, certainty remained out of reach. What these repeated near discoveries reveal is not failure, but difficulty. Lake Michigan is vast. Sediment shifts over time. Wrecks can be buried or broken apart. Some may lie beyond the reach of current technology. Others may have been destroyed by storms long before preservation could take hold. There is also the possibility that the Griffin did not sink intact. If it broke apart during a storm, its remains could be scattered across a wide area, making identification even harder. In that case, no single wreck would tell the full story. Meanwhile, underwater archaeology in the Great Lakes continues to advance. Each year, more shipwrecks are mapped and studied. These efforts refine search methods and improve understanding of lake conditions. Even when the Griffin is not found, the work contributes to broader knowledge of submerged history. The mystery of the Griffin also connects to a larger theme. It represents the beginning of European deep-water exploration in the Great Lakes, a moment when ambition met an environment shaped by ice, wind, and time. That environment still controls what is revealed and what remains hidden. Today, the Griffin is less a single ship and more a symbol. It stands for the limits of historical certainty and the patience required to explore submerged civilizations of trade and movement. Its story reminds researchers that not every deep-sea mystery yields to technology alone. As new surveys continue and old data is re-examined, the search remains open. The lake has not given a final answer. In the next part, the focus turns to why the Griffin matters beyond its disappearance, and how its unresolved fate shapes the way we understand early Great Lakes history. The importance of the Griffin does not come only from how it vanished, but from why it was built in the first place. René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, was not chasing glory at sea. He was trying to reshape the interior of North America. In the 1670s, France was locked in quiet competition with English and Dutch traders. Control of fur routes meant control of wealth, influence, and alliances with indigenous nations. Before the Griffin, movement across the Great Lakes relied mostly on canoes and small boats. These were effective but limited. La Salle imagined something larger. A floating warehouse. A ship that could carry heavy cargo, trade goods, and supplies deep into the continent. The Griffin was designed to make that vision real. Its construction itself was an achievement. Built above Niagara Falls, the ship had to be assembled in hostile conditions. Workers faced shortages, illness, and constant threats from rival traders who wanted the project to fail. La Salle pushed forward anyway. When the Griffin finally entered Lake Erie and later Lake Huron, it became the first full-size sailing ship to travel the upper Great Lakes. This moment marked a turning point. It showed that large-scale European shipping could operate far inland. That idea would later transform the region. Within decades, shipbuilding expanded, trade intensified, and the lakes became highways of commerce. In that sense, the Griffin was the starting line. Its disappearance, however, froze that moment in uncertainty. Because the ship never returned, La Salle's plans collapsed. He was left without supplies, without trade goods, and without proof that his vision could succeed. Forced to continue on foot and by canoe, his later expeditions struggled. Some historians argue that the loss of the Griffin directly contributed to La Salle's eventual failure and death in Texas in 1687. The ripple effects went beyond one man. French expansion slowed in the region. English traders gained ground. Indigenous nations who had been negotiating with multiple European powers adjusted their alliances accordingly. The loss of a single ship subtly shifted the balance of power. This broader context is one reason the Griffin remains so compelling. It is not just a missing wreck. It represents a fragile moment when history could have unfolded differently. The mystery also persists because the Great Lakes are unique underwater environments. Cold, fresh water preserves would better than salt oceans, but only under certain conditions. If a ship sinks into soft sediment and remains undisturbed, it can survive for centuries. If it lands on rock or is broken by waves, it may disappear almost entirely. Lake Michigan in particular is unpredictable. Its currents can move debris long distances. Storms can rearrange the lake bed. Over hundreds of years, even a large vessel can be reduced to scattered fragments. There is also the human factor. Fishing nets, anchors, and modern shipping traffic have damaged many historic wrecks. Before underwater archaeology became regulated, some sites were disturbed or looted, sometimes unknowingly. If the Griffin was encountered early and altered, identifying it later would be even harder. Modern underwater archaeology operates very differently. Today, archaeologists treat shipwrecks as protected historical sites, not treasure caches. Artifacts are documented in place whenever possible. Excavation is slow and careful. Every decision must balance discovery with preservation. This approach has changed how the Griffin is searched for. Instead of dramatic recoveries, researchers focus on mapping, non-invasive surveys, and comparison with known shipbuilding techniques from the 1600s. They study French naval records, timber sources, and construction patterns to know exactly what to look for. Yet even with this precision, uncertainty remains. Written descriptions of the Griffin are limited and sometimes contradictory. Measurements vary. Artistic depictions were created long after the fact and are unreliable. The ship exists more clearly in imagination than on paper. That ambiguity feeds debate. Some researchers believe the wreck has already been found but not correctly identified. Others think it lies in a location never seriously searched. A few argue that it may never be found at all. What keeps the search alive is not obsession but relevance. Each attempt to locate the Griffin refines methods used to study other lost vessels. Each failed claim sharpens standards. The mystery acts as a training ground for understanding deep-water archaeology in inland seas. It also continues to capture public imagination because it feels unfinished. There is no final document, no confirmed site, no closing chapter. Unlike many historical questions, this one is still physically present beneath the water, waiting or eroding or resting in silence. In the end, the Griffin may matter as much for what it teaches as for what it was. It reminds us that history is not always recoverable. Some stories resist completion. And sometimes, the absence of answers reveals more about the past than certainty ever could. To understand where the Griffin may have been lost, researchers first return to its final confirmed movements. In September of 1679, the ship departed from Green Bay, then known as La Bay. Its cargo was valuable and practical. Furs collected through trade, meant to be sold to finance La Salle's next expeditions. On board were a small crew under the command of the pilot Luc, sometimes identified in records as Luc d'Antoine. La Salle himself did not sail with the ship. He remained behind, expecting the Griffin to return within weeks. That decision would haunt the story. The ship sailed eastward into Lake Michigan, heading toward the Straits of Mackinac and then onward to Niagara. After that point, there are no eyewitness accounts. No distress signals. No debris recorded at the time. The Griffin simply vanished. From this silence, several theories emerge, each grounded in real conditions and historical context rather than speculation. The most widely accepted explanation is a storm-related sinking. Lake Michigan is capable of producing sudden, violent storms, especially in late summer and early fall. Weather records from the period are limited, but later shipwreck data shows that many vessels were lost in similar conditions. Strong winds can push ships far off course, and shallow reefs near the northern and eastern shores have claimed countless hulls. Supporters of this theory point to the ship's design. Although large for its time, the Griffin was heavily loaded and unfamiliar to its crew in rough lake conditions. Ballast problems, shifting cargo, or damaged rigging could have quickly turned dangerous. If the ship went down in deep water, it might still rest there, preserved but unseen, part of a deep-sea mystery hidden in freshwater. Another theory suggests the ship never made it far into open water at all. Some historians believe the Griffin may have sunk near Washington Island or the Dore Peninsula, areas known for strong currents and submerged rock formations. These regions are dense with later shipwrecks, forming one of the Great Lakes' most concentrated underwater graveyards. In these shallow zones, a wooden ship could have been broken apart by waves and ice over centuries. If that happened, only scattered timbers might remain, difficult to distinguish from other sunken structures without clear identifying features. A more controversial idea involves sabotage or mutiny. La Salle was a demanding leader, and tensions within his expeditions are well documented. Some crew members resented the risks and hardships. There were also rival traders who stood to gain from the ship's failure. Historical letters mention rumors that the ship was intentionally damaged or even stolen. However, no direct evidence supports this. No crew members later surfaced with goods from the Griffin. No alternative accounts of its fate appeared. Most modern historians treat this idea cautiously, acknowledging the unrest while rejecting unsupported conclusions. Still, the fact that the ship carried valuable cargo keeps the theory alive in public imagination. The mystery deepened in the 20th century, when technology made it possible to search the lakebed systematically. Side-scan sonar, magnetometers, and remotely operated vehicles transformed underwater archaeology. Large areas of Lake Michigan could now be mapped in detail. These tools have located hundreds of shipwrecks, from 19th-century schooners to steel freighters. Each discovery added to knowledge about currents, sediment, and preservation. At the same time, they sharpened the question: if so much has been found, why not the Griffin? In 2001, the mystery took a dramatic turn. A team led by historian and diver Steve Libert announced that they had found a wooden wreck near Poverty Island that matched the size and age of the Griffin. Artifacts recovered from the site included a carved wooden piece believed to depict a griffin-like creature. The announcement drew international attention. Some media outlets declared the mystery solved. But skepticism followed quickly. Other archaeologists questioned the interpretation of the artifacts. The carving, critics argued, did not clearly match 17th-century French styles. The wreck's construction details also raised doubts. Dendrochronology, the study of tree ring dating, was inconclusive. The site was eventually designated as a protected wreck, but official recognition as the Griffin never came. This episode revealed a deeper issue in underwater archaeology. Identification is rarely simple. Ships from different periods can appear similar once submerged. Wood erodes. Context disappears. Without inscriptions, cargo records, or definitive structural markers, certainty is elusive. Another claim surfaced years later near the Wisconsin shoreline, where sonar images suggested a large wooden vessel buried under sediment. Preliminary surveys showed promise, but funding and access limitations slowed further study. As with many ancient ocean discoveries, progress depended as much on resources as on evidence. Today, most researchers agree on one point: if the Griffin survives, it is likely deeply buried. Sediment can act as both a shield and a veil, preserving wood while hiding it from sensors. In such cases, even advanced equipment may detect only vague outlines. This reality forces archaeologists to work patiently, piecing together environmental data with historical routes. They study prevailing winds from 1679, known shipping lanes, and indigenous oral histories that mention early European ships lost on the lakes. Each fragment adds context, even if it does not point to a single location. The search for the Griffin has also reshaped how submerged civilizations and underwater archaeology are understood in inland waters. The Great Lakes are now recognized not just as industrial corridors, but as cultural landscapes layered with centuries of human movement. Shipwrecks become time capsules. Even when unnamed, they reveal construction methods, trade patterns, and daily life. In this way, the Griffin influences the field whether or not it is ever found. As research continues, the question slowly shifts. It becomes less about proving one discovery right or wrong, and more about understanding why certainty is so hard to reach in underwater history. The Griffin sits at the edge of what evidence can confirm. And that boundary between what is known and what remains submerged is where the next part of the story continues.